I've said before that at the beginning of my incarceration at High Desert State Prison, phone calls were a problem for me. It just always felt like I could have talked to my family just a little bit more, that no matter how much I had spoken to them, there's just a little more that I would have liked to say. Looking back, I realized that I wasn't just speaking to my family, I was avoiding processing the environment that I was in by escaping for 15 minutes at a time into the phone and towards my family. This is an addiction. I was avoiding processing bad information by engaging with my family in the phone. It's just about the most wholesome addiction I can imagine, but it is an addiction, and any addiction can get you into trouble. I just worried about the phone too much. I worried about mail too much. Scooby joked one time that whenever the mailbag came into the building, I acted like it was stuffed full of pardons because all I cared about was whether or not something was going to get dropped under my door. In order for this story to make sense, I have to explain that correctional officers have multiple duties that they perform within one job title. What I mean by that is that you might have a floor officer who was assigned to a building, let's say B3 where I was, and his job is to provide security in the building. He might speak to inmates, he might put inmates on the ground or in handcuffs if an alarm went off. If an alarm went off, he might also have to run to another building where the alarm was. His duties in an emergency might differ from that of other floor officers. Some stay where they are and maintain the security of the area that they're at. Others respond to an alarm and provide security there, whereas still others have areas of the institution they go to secure. In addition to how they respond in an emergency, floor officers have more subtle tasks that they perform. They get to know the inmates in the building that they work, and they go through their personal files that say what they're in for, what problems they got into while they were incarcerated. Over the course of a couple of months or a year, this can be an effective tool for a floor officer. He establishes a rapport with inmates. He might develop a snitch who gives him information. He might just get a feel for how the building works, maybe who deals drugs, so he knows what cell to search, because that's also part of his job duties. The gunners, the guy in the towers, they have far fewer things they do because the primary job that they fill is gunner. They take or save lives. That's what his job is. But in addition to that, he has the job of reading outgoing mail. Any inmate that writes a letter, it's the gunner's job to not read every word or even every line, but take the letter and kind of just skim through it and make sure that he's not discussing illegal matters, that he's not calling in a hit or selling drugs or something like that. In addition to reading inmate mail, they also listen to the phone calls of the inmates in their building. There are 4 phones that inmates are allowed to use, and the gunner can just walk over and pick up his phone, which also allows him to speak to other officers or even can call out so he can talk to his family at home. But he can also press a button next to the phone and listen to any one of the 4 phones in his building that inmates may be listening to. They say whenever you call out, these phone calls are recorded and monitored. They're all recorded, and the internal gang investigation unit occasionally pulls them up further in the future for judicial proceedings, or just to maintain a file of the calls that one inmate has made. The monitoring, on the other hand, is done immediately in the building by the gunner. DeWall was the gunner in B3, and I noticed that every time that I got on the phone, it seemed like he walked right over and picked up the phone that would have allowed him to listen to my call. I couldn't be sure he was listening to me. There's any number of other things he could be doing, but sometimes you get a feel for things, and I really felt like he was listening to me every time that I talked. I decided to set up an experiment. Whenever I spoke to my wife, I would occasionally tell jokes, because I had just 1,000 jokes memorized at this time, for reasons that I'll go into in another video. One day, I waited until I saw DeWall up in the tower, listening to the phone while I was talking, and I told a joke to my wife, paying very close attention to DeWall's reaction. Sure enough, whenever I got to the punchline, I saw him a little bit. I didn't mind. This may sound creepy to some people, but it's literally his job. He's being paid to listen to my calls, and I understand why. I'm not engaged in criminal activity, but I could be. I'm in prison. This is the deal. I didn't mind that he was listening, but at the same time, I felt pretty dang clever for having figured it out, so I wanted to show off somehow, I guess. The next time that I saw that he was up in the tower, and I was pretty sure he was listening to me, I told my wife a joke. I had a favorite, and it happened to fit the situation. I said, there's a potato farmer who his son gets arrested. They believe that he's committed a murder. And the potato farmer just has no idea how he's going to plant his crop that year. So he visits his son in jail, and they have the little partition with the glass, and he's on the phone talking to him. He says, son, you need to get out of here. What's going on? I can't plant the crops by myself. We're going to lose the farm. And his son says to him, Dad, oh, Jesus Christ, man, they record these calls. Listen, that's where I hid the body. The body's in the field. You need to just leave it alone. Don't do anything. Don't talk to anybody. Just leave it alone, and we'll figure it out after I beat this case, okay? His dad is mortified. The body's in the field? He kind of just hangs up and goes home and tries to figure out what he's going to do next. Of course, these calls are monitored and recorded. So the detectives hear that that body is in the field, and they immediately drive out there and start harassing the guy's father. Where's the body? Tell us, old man. Where would he have dug? And the guy legitimately doesn't know. He was shocked there might be a body in the field that he grows his potatoes. So the detectives go out there and they start looking. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, just destroying this field looking for the body. Finally, they give up. They're sick of it, and they go back to the jail, and they pull this guy out and say, murderer, you piece of garbage. Where's the body? And he tells them, well, no, I've been telling you guys I'm innocent. There is no body. He goes back to his jail cell, and that night he writes his father. Dad, I can't get out of jail. I'm sorry, I got to fight this case, so I can't help take care of the farm, but I got the field dug. It's all tilled. You're going to have to plant the potatoes yourself this year, though. I love that joke, and sure enough, whenever I got to the punchline, the wall up in the tower against her, and I was ready. He looked down at me, and I looked up at him and made eye contact, smiled. I caught him clean. He knew that I caught him laughing at my joke. Nothing came of it. We never even talked about it because, again, it was his job. He was allowed to do it. It was just nice to be able to point out that I knew. Prison is a funny place because you're monitored, you're watched all the time. It's not just staff, and yes, there are a bunch of staff that have their eyes on you. It's all the other inmates. They're assessing you. They're figuring out who you are and what they can expect of you. Your cellie is always trying to get a feel for what you're going to do next. Being constantly assessed and monitored and judged, it can be wearing. It can make somebody tired and just ready to give up. On the other hand, if you allow it to be, it can be a powerful tool for self-improvement. Accountability breeds responsibility. That's a very important sentence. Accountability breeds responsibility. Whenever you're constantly being held accountable for what you do, even what you think, who you are in the final analysis, you can't lie to yourself or others. You can't pretend to be better than you are. You're accountable right then. Of course, we can't engineer a prison environment. You can't have hundreds of people always watching you and judging you and telling you whenever you need to pick it up a little bit, tighten up your program a little bit, Wood. That's just not going to happen in everyday life. But what you can do is you can arrange to be accountable to yourself, because you are there all the time. You have a mirror, and you have 100 times a day whenever you tend to the needs of your body in some way. You brush your teeth, you look at it and you comb out your hair a little bit. You also have a conscience. And every time that you're tending to your body, you have an opportunity to tend to your soul too. You can ask yourself, the last time that I was faced with a hard choice, did I make the right choice? You ask yourself, is who I am, who I want to be, or am I at least growing towards who I want to be? You need to be accountable to yourself, because accountability breeds responsibility.